This is iFanboy Pick of the Week, number 955, brought to you by the quiet calm before an epic early snowstorm. My name is Ryan Haupt, and this is my co-host, Josh Flanagan.
Wait, you're Mike? Wait, I'm your co-host? Today I am.
Yes, today that is how it's going. I have stolen Connor's microphone and I've taken over the show, and we are here to record iFanboy Pick of the Week, episode 955. Each week, one of us picks the book they like best from their stack of comics, and we call that the Pick of the Week. We're going to talk about that book, other books from the week, the Patron Pick, listener mail, and it's going to be fun, Josh.
Hold on, I'm searching the definition and symptoms of a manic episode.
It's going to be fun.
Just to make sure that you're okay over there.
You will have fun.
Okay.
Listen, I can quit anytime. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you go into your podcast app and set iFanboy up to auto-download. It really helps us out if you do that. If you're listening on Pocket Cast, you can now give us a rating.
Ratings.
You need to have been subscribed for a little bit and downloaded a few episodes before you can rate it. So please take a few minutes, give us a nice rating, and we appreciate you. Now, let's get on with the show. Here's your spoiler warning. There will be spoilers. Exercise some caution. And this week, I had the pick. The pick of the week this week was The Question All Along the Watchtower, number 1. And now I have to ask, Josh, did you go and read this after I told you it was the pick?
I did, yeah, like 20 minutes ago.
Okay. It was written by Alex Segura with art by Kian Tormey, colors by Romulo Farado Jr., and letters by Willie Schubert. And yeah, this is the first of a new question series taking place in the Justice League Unlimited new sort of schema that we're all living in, where the Watchtower is back. So I'm going to be honest, it took me a real long time to put together the 2 and 2 that the Watchtower in question was the Justice League Watchtower satellite. But I read this book.
It's like the whole thing that's going on now.
Yeah, no, that was I listen. I was dropping the ball there, but I feel like I picked it back up, and I love the question. I think the reason I missed the All Along the Watchtower thing is because isn't All Along the Watchtower one of the like end tags on a Watchmen chapter, and then so I went straight from thinking about like Rorschach and the question.
It's a Dylan song.
No,
which is why
you know how
like
at the end of
the
each
Watchmen chapter,
which like each Watchmen chapter would have like a quote. Yeah.
There was the Elvis Costello one on the first issue, but yeah, I don't think that's
so. So I was thinking more about the Watchmen than I was thinking about the Justice League Watchtower when I first read this issue, but I really liked it. I love this artist. I love that Constantine has like a default pose. I saw him on a page in the Watchtower, and I'm like, oh yeah, his pose is always like at that angle, lighting a cigarette that way. It was great. And then I loved all the little cameos. I loved seeing folks just like hanging out in the Watchtower. I really liked, this is a Renee Montoya question. I'm more of a Vic Sage guy, but I've not connected with Renee as much as the question, but I really liked how this kind of introduced her and where she fits in this current, mode of the DCU, and I liked that she sort of had a little bit of interaction with each of the Trinity, and I liked the double Blue Beetles teaming up, and I thought it introduced a lot of fun concepts. It's weird, I actually felt a little guilty picking an issue 1 because the last time, Josh, you and I talked about the end of the Tom Taylor Nightwing run, you talked about how like endings are harder than beginnings, and so yeah, like this was an easier lift than trying to finish a satisfying story, but I still thought it did a nice job of putting a lot of different little interesting elements in play. I think the Challenge of the Unknown are a fun little, like, very deep cut DC reference. And so, I just enjoyed each of the little pieces of this and how they all kind of came together, and I'm interested to see where the story goes.
Let me ask you this. That page you're talking about with Constantine, right?
Yeah.
There's a man and a horse behind them leaning against a wall.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is. Why is this horse there?
I do know. Hang on.
That looks like Dirk from the Dungeon Master game or whatever it was called. You know what I'm talking about? The animated like Don Bluth video game.
Yes.
It looks like that character. But
that is Shining Knight.
Is he peeing on the wall?
I don't know what he's doing to the horse.
That's weird, right?
Hopefully nothing inappropriate, but it's Sir Justin the Shining Knight. Mm-hmm. He's a member of the extended Justice League.
I think everybody is now.
and he was a knight in King Arthur's court who survived into the 20th century. So he's like the DC version of, is it Black Knight in Marvel?
Yeah, okay. How did you know that?
Because I remember he's in the background. He's like in an episode of the cartoon.
Okay. You really pulled that out, though. That's pretty impressive.
Thanks.
I don't think I would have made this the pick.
Okay.
I don't love the question. I don't have a problem with Renee Montoya as the question. I'm not really connected to either, but it's one of those characters I don't really know how they fit into this. And I missed a lot of whatever happened to her that she was referring to the whole time. I don't think this did a great job of explaining, you kind of had to know who she was.
Yeah.
In order, it wasn't very introductory for number one. And then at the same time, I kind of felt a lot of it was a little, I don't know. It read like a kid's superhero book to me a little bit.
I didn't know about her being in recovery, in like an AA program.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, even though besides that, but I just mean like the way that, I don't know, it felt a little plain, I guess. The other thing that was, I just didn't like the vague nature of the threat. Like all of these people were just like, I don't know, man, something's going on. And I was like, what?
Right.
Like,
so the threat is someone is like trying to hack the Watchtower and no one can figure out who for some reason.
But it's not it doesn't even seem as straightforward as hack. It's just like someone's trying to break in. I was like, what do you mean? It was a little vague, I think. I think it did a good job being like it read like a superhero story. It read like a question story from the 80s almost. And that's not necessarily bad, but I had a hard time getting into it. I think the art was fine. It was definitely comparable. I liked the visual setup of the place. It's a fun, world, sort of like to sort of like this is the city that they're working in.
I think that was kind of what, I think I liked the city feel of it. We talked about this on the show recently, and I think I just need to commit to going back and doing a reread of it, in all my ample spare time.
Sure.
Of top 10. Like, I just want a superhero cop story. And
it's
this
real good.
felt like that enough that it scratched the itch for me where I was like, okay, yeah. And there were several other books that we're going to talk about that I was more excited about than this book. Mm-hmm. And for various reasons, they all fell short in ways where I was just I wasn't riding high enough on the horse high enough on my Shining Knight horse for them to be the pick. And so this was the book that I felt like I had no expectations for, very, very low awareness of what it was supposed to be going into it, and felt like it delivered, a satisfying first chapter of a book that I'm now planning on continuing to check out.
Now, Jaime, the Blue Beetle Jaime,
yeah,
is he still supposed to be a teenager? Because he is one jacked buff motherfucker in this.
I had that thought too. I was like, this guy's 30. Yeah.
It looks like the way it's colored, it looks like his gray temples. I was like,
I thought that too. I had that same thought.
50-year-old Nightwing with armor? What is going on here?
It does kind of look like that, doesn't it?
So that wasn't ideal.
Like, is Ted Kord supposed to be annoying? Like, I thought we all liked Ted Kord.
No, I think that's consistent. Like, it depends on how they are, but he's kind of the nerdy one. And I think that's always been his thing. And like Booster is the blustery one, and Ted is the nerdy one. I mean, you can play it however you need to, depending on the story. Also, really going with a Western iconography with her in this. She has the bandana. She's got the shotgun on her back, and that's interesting because that's not really a detective. That's a sheriff. Well, she says at some point, I'm the sheriff or whatever, but I think it's supposed to be a detective story. And I tend to think of the question more as like an urban character, I guess. And it's not, again, not bad. It just seemed incongruous. Like they liked the one concept, but didn't quite fit. I don't know. I can see that. Yeah, I wasn't going to read this. I looked at it and I was on the fence and I was just like, eh.
I've been trying to get less precious about the pick. Like, I think there was a time where I was newer to being sort of a regular rotating co-host where like it felt like a sacred responsibility, and not that it isn't, but I think I would agonize over it to the point where you and I've talked about it where like it slowed the show down. and so in getting over that, sometimes I just have to be like, it's a gut check of what's the book I enjoyed the most this week. And this was one of those weeks where it was just kind of like, yep, that was it. It was the question. Like, I don't have a ton of extra rationale behind it. It hit me where I lived enough to make it across that threshold. And I just, I'm trying to just put the pick out there and run with it.
So I understand that I just sounded very negative on that. And in fact, I sound quite somber because I'm exhausted. But I want this known that as we talk about the books that are coming up, I absolutely loved the comics that I read this week. And one after another.
Week. Yeah.
Yeah, one after another, I was like, this is great. We are so lucky right now. Like, I was into it. So we'll see how that goes going forward. So Action Comics, which I guess comes out every 2 weeks, so it feels like I am constantly reading it. We're in the middle of this. I mean, I've read this story to a certain, this setting anyway. Superman goes back to Krypton, spend time with his parents. They don't know it's him. Krypton society's fucked up. People don't talk about that enough. Like, Krypton's an awful place to live, as far as I can tell.
Not if you're I was gonna say not if you're a scientist, but Jor-El's like the top scientist, and he's miserable. So yeah, maybe
it's always like, if you're in the ruling class, it's great. And I was like, that's kind of everywhere, But it's definitely like this totalitarian system, where the elites have all the rights and everybody else can go screw.
With universal healthcare.
You know what I thought was really interesting about, they even get sick?
Remember, because it was a previous issue, but Clark has to go to the Kryptonian hospital, and that's when he gets the new outfit that he's wearing in this issue. So
yeah, but that's because he's not getting like whatever they put in there, like whatever the equivalent of fluoride in the water there keeps everybody cool. They're like, what's wrong with this guy? I don't know what I'm talking about. You know what's really interesting about this issue, and I'm enjoying this. I think it is just kind of wacky enough and romantic in a way. Not romantic like I love you, lady, but like the romance of nostalgia. And
it's an adventure, right? Yeah. Like it's romantic in the way an adventure is romantic.
So, like it's a different Superman in here. Like like Clark Kent. I feel like we don't get a lot of Superman self-narration captions. I was like, this is kind of weird. But he's also this version of Superman that's in here is very, I don't know, he's very self-conscious. Like there's some point where something goes wrong. Like he sneaks in to the building and then he sneaks out and he gets caught and he's like, no, I was clear. And I was like, that's pretty panicky for the Man of Steel.
I also like that he makes a comment at one point about like, in this version of this, time traveling, he's older than Jor-El. And so he's seeing a less mature version of his own father in a way that gives him some different perspective. And I think that's a really interesting dynamic that I've not seen before.
Well, but also at the same time, like he's depowered to a certain extent. He is out of his depth and he's around his parents. So it changes his whole relationship with the world that he's in. He is so used to being omnipotent, around there's really nothing that he has to worry about. It's just being a good dude. That's kind of his thing. Like, I got to do the right thing. And there's too many people who need help. That's his problem, that he can't save everybody. But in this, it's a whole different kind of thing. Like he's in danger and it's his parents. So we're all kind of younger when we're around our parents. You don't act the same way your parents' house that you do at work.
Oh yeah. I also like how in the normal comics, I feel like this is true for, I feel like I see it the most often in Superman and Batman, but it applies to a lot of other, Wolverine, Logan is another example of this, where like, no matter the situation, they just speak that language. Because, Batman's brilliant, Superman has enough time to speed learn everything, Wolverine has lived long enough. And in this, like, they reference the fact that like his Kryptonese is not that good. So like he's also struggling even just to communicate with folks, which I find kind of interesting. I've been really enjoying Action Comics. It's been a really fun series. I have no idea what's going on with the Connor Kent and Keenan.
I was going to say though, first of all, the art on that, who I assume is Michael Shelfer. I'm actually enjoying those bits, like for whatever. And I don't usually like these characters all that much. They're not Superboy, but it's kind of fun to watch.
It's just such a weird dynamic that like Connor Kent, Superboy, has been a character since the 90s, and the 90s are back, and Keenan, the Superman of China, is a relatively new character, at least in my headcanon, but the way their dynamic here in this comic is Keenan is the elder statesman and Connor is the young screw-up, and I don't know that I fully buy that relationship between the two of them.
Well, I think it's malleable. I think it needs to be what it is. And to me, like the canon being like, I think wasn't Connor Kent like stuck in space or somewhere for a really long time? So maybe,
No, that was
Keenan
Jonathan.
No, but there was something where like they brought Connor back because he hadn't been around. I don't remember what it is, but like there's ways that you can work
He's
it
been
out.
off the table for a while, but he's back now. But yeah.
How do you feel about the Supergirl backup in this?
I wish I liked it, and I don't at all. Even a little bit. Like, unfortunately, I feel bad.
I understand not liking it, and I don't understand why I do like it.
Like, I can't figure out what am I missing about what this story is supposed to be, because it's kind of weirdly psychedelic.
So I've been lost for probably the last couple of them. First of all, I really like the art on it for whatever reason.
It's got all red vibes.
Megan Hetrick, written by Mariko Tamaki. I had been reminded, I feel like this one gave me a little bit of a toehold on what was going on, where she's been sent to transport this prisoner, and Cal was like, this sucks, but you got to go, and she doesn't know why. And this one kind of reminded me of that. Like, stuff happens and we start to understand what this thing is. It's a little drawn out, but whatever. It's a few pages back up in this, but she's like, I don't know why Clark sent me out. And I was right. That's the mystery, is like, what is it going to do? And so at the end, the looks like a late era Star Wars character that they couldn't figure out how to design.
It does. That's a great description of the character.
But they have something to do with the end of worlds. And then of course the last thing that happens is like, whoever that person is, like, kill me before it's too late, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Clark wouldn't send her out to kill somebody. So what is going on? And there is one double page in here where they're looking at each other, and they basically split the panel into two with the two faces. And in one of them is Kara's reflection, and it's slightly smaller than the other side because the heads are matched. And I was like, that's really interesting. Mm-hmm. There was a couple of ways to do that, and I thought they did it well. Yeah, like I said, I don't know that I can fully explain it, but I really want to know what's going to happen, and not like a lot of times when I want to know what's going to happen because I'm confused, I don't bother. I don't care. But
yeah, and I think I was also just digging the previous backup, the Rainbow Rowell, more Clark and Lois relationship, which is Rainbow Rowell's strong suit, and so
I really like Supergirl, and I feel like they've been poking around with what her character is now, and Connor's had problems. Like, I don't like who she's like anymore, but I think they aged her up a little bit. And yeah, she's interesting.
Yeah, I like that everyone sort of acknowledges within the world of this series, within the Action Comics realm, that like there's all these Kryptonians. There's like a lot of Kryptonians running around right now on Earth, and everyone acknowledges that like Kara's the only one who's actually at Clark's level.
She's number 2.
Yeah, I like that.
I like her. I like this costume too. Like, I know that everybody doesn't want, but I think. Like, it looks good. Like, it looks appropriate.
I'm tired. I mean, I say this heading into winter. I'm tired of jackets.
I get it. It's definitely like very Captain Marvel vibey, but it's hard to take the other one very seriously.
Yeah,
there it is. Batman and Robin Year One as a series, and specifically issue number 2, we're going to talk about. That's a little ray of sunshine, isn't it?
Whew. Yeah, it's real good. I mean, holy continuity, Batman. This is excellent.
Can I tell you that I try not to have high expectations because, I am who I am, and I figure I'll just get disappointed. And for some reason, I put off reading this book because I don't want it to disappoint me. If that makes any sense to you at all. I just think this should be so good, and I'm going to be so disappointed if it isn't. I don't know if I can face it. And then I read it, and I was like, nah, it's all good.
Yeah.
I just like
the panel or the page, page 8 on your digital readers, where the social worker turns away for a second, and Bruce makes a fist at Dick to get him to get in line. And then the next panel, he's got his arm around him, and they're buddy. I'm just like, holy crap, that is excellent cartooning.
Yeah. The page before that, where she opens the door, and look at the angle on the first panel, and the two bodies. The camera is on the ground, looking up, basically, and he is flying through the. Like, it is a gorgeous drawing. It's a gorgeous composition. It moves. It works on the page turn. If you look at how formatted and formal the page before it is. It's just straight up square panels, as we're going through this house, and all of a sudden that first panel opens it up and it's moving. Then you go to those, every panel on this page is beautiful.
I like this dynamic between Bruce and Dick, where Dick is so good at this that getting trained by Batman is boring. Like, he's bored. Like, he's not being pushed hard enough by Batman. To me, that's like, oh, that absolutely exemplifies what their relationship is.
And he's brave. But I think I talked about this with Connor, but the story has always been that, like, Dick doesn't listen to Batman, goes too far, gets himself into danger, and that's when he learns he has to take this seriously. And I don't want that. And so this is like, there's a bunch of like, what are you doing? And he's like, let him do it his way. There's a great sequence.
Yeah, Mark Waid is absolutely towing the line between this not being an after school special.
Yeah.
Because that's not, I agree with you. I don't think that's what we need here. Sorry, you were going to tell us about a sequence?
No, and he's just like, there's a thing where he goes through, he stops the cannon, with a fish, I think is the, wait, is that this one?
Yep.
Okay. He does that. And then, the way that he rescues the kids by snowboarding the door down the flaming building. And he's, and now presenting, like, they're really playing up the fact that
he's a circus
not only
performer.
was this kid, I know, but a lot of times they just sort of take that he's a circus performer for granted. And they try to represent that by the way that he jumps and moves and does stuff. But actually what you're seeing here is that he likes putting on the show. He likes making it dramatic and making it a big deal, which actually works with the Robin dynamic so well, because it's kind of terrible when you say it out loud, but he's supposed to be the decoy, really, or at least and he's really decoying it up here.
I know Connor knows this because we talked about it, I think, on the Patron Hangouts, but the most recent D&D campaign I played a character named Grayson, who was an Aarakocra, which are like bird people. He was an Aarakocra monk who was raised in a bat monastery. And it's funny, like, pretending to be Dick Grayson in a role-playing game, that was a part, I know this sounds completely ridiculous and I'm up my own ass, but like, that performative aspect of Dick really came out in my understanding of the character by actually, like, trying to pretend to be him. And so I'm really enjoying seeing this. And my wife actually got me trapeze lessons.
Oh, jeez.
As a birthday present to help me, like, play the character better. And something I figured out early on in the trapeze lessons is that, like, the flamboyantness of trapeze is functional as well as it is performative. Like, the way you throw your arm out in a big wide gesture, like, it actually helps you balance when you're holding, because the trapeze bar is fucking heavy. So, like, there's elements of, that life that I think I'm being very long-winded in agreeing with you is what's happening. So
I just realized that sequence that I was talking about, because I doubted myself that it was in here, and it's the first 2 page spread in the comic book. That whole sequence is done on the 2 pages. That's amazing. Chris Samnee's so good.
He's so good. I think we've gotten, we've talked back and forth a lot about how, like, Bruce Wayne as a character goes through these phases where he's just so dour that it's unbelievable that this person would have any empathy in them at all. And the face acting of Bruce Wayne, Chris Samnee's ability to make him emote even in the mask, that last sequence when he's talking to the guy with the burns all over him, like the sadness that he has in knowing this guy's about to die, like, even though he might be a bad guy, like, it's really good.
Yeah, the panel where Robin's inside and he looks at the building before it blows up, he's concerned. And again, like, he's making the wrinkles on and then actually, if you look a couple of pages from now, Robin is putting in a lot of pizzazz as he comes out. But if you look at the panels, they're like, he's sweating and he's concerned. He's got like a little, he says, don't be frightened. That's my job. Now, his face betrays that he is a little frightened. And then when he says, that's my job, they put that in little text. Just these little details, it's quite a thing. Oh man. It's hard to not be impressed by every single panel in this book. Like, you can go ahead, flip to a random page and find a panel, and you're going to find something awesome in it.
Thanks again for the cool cape. Don't mention it. Like, it's so good.
It is. It's great stuff. It's yeah. Are you reading Lawful?
I'm
from
not.
Boom?
Tell me about it.
Okay, so this is Greg Pak with the artist Diego Galindo. And it's a otherworld sort of situation where there's a city and it has sort of normal people in it. It's definitely like a sci-fi thing, but if you do anything wrong against the rules, steal, lie, whatever, you start to turn into a monster. And if you turn into too much of a monster, you become sort of part of the underclass, and eventually they throw you over the wall. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
And so the main character is this guy, and his dad had been one of the higher up dudes, in the non-monster people. And he was so virtuous and right, and the kid is trying so hard to be a good guy, but his best friend is this girl, and she does bad things, so she's like half monster. And then he has to help his mom, and he has to break a rule to do it. So he starts breaking out, in scales and stuff like that. And it's a really weird book, and I think it has the potential as a concept and execution of being not good. Like if I read the synopsis for this by anybody, it was some writer I'd never heard of who hadn't been working on it that long, I could see it being an okay concept that wasn't executed very well. Just like a boring Dark Horse book. But Greg Pak is doing it in such a way that we're 5 issues in, and I'm like wrapped. And I'm not going to tell you like, oh man, I read that his comic is great, but I do find that like I'm like, where is he going with this thing? It's kind of it's a comment on morality. It's a comment on following rules, and of course, the ruling class. That's going to happen over and over again with all these goddamn liberal comic book writers.
Wow. Okay. All right. We're leaning into the hard right turn.
Yeah.
Right
Listen,
time
it happens
it.
to all of us. It happens to me. It happened to me last week. I find myself surprised that I really look forward to these issues coming out. I think the art is great. It's not too much. It's a little like it's kind of simpler than it looks when you stare at it. But a lot of I'm trying to think of who it looks like, and I do not have a good example, so I'm not going to try. He's all covered in scales and has monsters now, and it's a really sort of interesting, fun book that isn't like the other ones. And that is going to be my theme, is that I'm reading this book, and it kind of reminds me of other stuff, but it is its own thing, and it's really good. So it's unique in that way.
The art almost I'm looking at some preview pages now. It's a little Cliff Chang.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, yes. And
in a good way.
I couldn't kind of put my finger on it.
As a compliment.
Yeah, it's definitely, it reminds me of something like that I can't quite put my finger on, but it's in that school for sure.
Nice. Well, I'm a Greg Pak fan. I don't know how I missed this series, but I will definitely go back and check it out.
Yeah, it's like it's not reinventing the wheel, but it's just like, okay, this is a new kind of world.
I feel like his series tend to me to read like really interesting pitches for TV shows. And I don't say that as a dig. Like I actually
and you're right. And he's
because there are definitely books that come out.
Is a TV show,
right? there are books that come out where it feels like sort of a shameless attempt to get a TV pilot picked up, whereas his books feel like well realized, fleshed out story worlds that would work as a TV show.
And he's a good comic book writer. I mean, just at the end of the day, like that's the deal. And I think maybe the thing I was getting at is that the concept reminds me of something that I would read in a mediocre book that was not executed well from IDW, or somebody who couldn't afford top tier artists or something like that. But because this is a lot like Hunger in the Dusk, is that the skill of the writer in particular, knowing how to tell a comic book story. So therefore they're using the tools and formats of, the machine of mainstream comics, which is a very good method for telling stories, but doing it with this other kind of property, like it just sings. It does really well.
Nice.
Yeah. Hey, I'm just talking a lot on this one, but if you like the show, if you like the program that we're doing here, you can help support it over at patreon.com/iFanboy. You can directly support the show. There's unlocking of the shows. There was the patrons unlock shows, so the media explodes and the talk explodes, and there's live monthly patron hangouts, which you can come and chat with us as we're doing the big show. You can also watch it later. It's your patron benefit. It's just for you. There's great communities on Discord and Facebook of the best people in comics fandom, as far as I know. Wonderful folk all around who are fair and nice and kind people and thoughtful. I'm not even kissing ass. Like, that wasn't a thing. Like, they just are. And on the internet, that's so rare. But we thank everybody who helps us do this.
At least it's gotten worse. the iFanboy community has gotten, like, the iFanboy community is a oasis of sanity.
Oh yeah. It might make us seem better in comparison, but it's like thoughtful, nice, smart people. It's just great. iFanboy.threadless.com. Now, here's the thing. Last time I said to you, I said it's 13 designs on those, but no, we dropped a boatload of new designs, comic book centric, fun quotes and things like that. There are now 20. There's 7 more designs that we put up there for your comic book nerd clothing and or sundry pleasure. Really kind of simple, cool designs for comic book lovers. We have, some quotes in there that you probably recognize from comic books that you loved, great moments. I'm very proud of those designs that are up there. Please go check them out. ifanboy.threadless.com. There is a sale coming up. I should have the stuff in front of me, but I don't. Wait, hold on. I'm going to tell you what it is. There, I think this week, let's see. Nope. I'm doing badly. Black Friday sale start. Yeah, it started. So you can go there, and there was the stuff's cheaper. So there you go. iFanboy.com/support has a donation link via PayPal. So you don't want to deal with any of that, but you want to sort of drop something in the tip jar or whatever, we can always appreciate that. iFanboy.com/Amazon is our general shopping link, affiliate link for Amazon. And now's the time, man. If you were ever gonna use that link, if you're buying Christmas presents or doing whatever, maybe you're stocking up winter supplies. Ryan, you're about to get hit with a gigantic storm, and
I can't wait.
Yeah, and what if, man, I need some shovels here in no time, and they usually get them to you pretty fast. That's good stuff. Anyway, use that link from Amazon. I don't know what that was about, but bookshop.org, finally, where appropriate, there'll be links to bookshop.org, which aggregates local bookstores as a way that you can order books online from those very important businesses and help them keep them healthy and thriving. Jenny Sparks is a weird book.
I really like it, though.
Yeah, I didn't mean it in a bad way. It just
no. Like, I can't. It's so weird that I can't figure out. I almost can't figure out what to say about it, which is one of the reasons I put it in the short section. But like, it's so strange.
It shouldn't work in that most of the time putting these really unique and odd Wildstorm characters into the DC universe is a weird fit. And it kind of is.
It is, yep.
But like, this Jenny Sparks is pretty Jenny Sparks.
The literal power dynamic is off with the Wildstorm characters in the DC universe. Like, that's the problem I have with it, is that, like, her powers don't really make sense in a world with Superman. But
I agree with that.
And she's not even, and I would say that's true for most of the members of the Authority. I mean, to me, like, Jack Hawksmoor, not to go down the rabbit hole, is like, has the most fascinating power of any superhero I've ever heard of. But seeing Jenny Sparks, like, so I guess what's interesting about this book is that, like, Captain Atom is being treated as sort of a god tier threat, and his whole thing is about becoming God. And it's unclear to me, is Jenny Sparks actually outclassed here or not?
And I think that's supposed to be the mystery, but like, he has killed the rest of the Justice League, so obviously she's better off than them. And like, Captain Atom is way, 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 way more powerful. Like, he's manipulating reality, it seems like.
Yeah, what do you think about, like, the thing Tom is doing here with the clothes?
I don't know. I don't understand it, which isn't to say, I don't know. I'm just waiting to sort of figure it out. I absolutely like it. I enjoy it, and I'm not going to say I'm impressed by it yet. I will tell you that when it's at the end, but I'm very intrigued. Yeah,
I was very. To me, like, the whole thing, there's sort of side story about Jenny Sparks, like, executing someone who had to deal with the mortgage crisis in the early aughts, and like I had no idea like where is this coming from? Like how is this connected?
And she didn't do it, but she didn't stop it.
I also, all right, this is again a very small point. I mean, I love The Authority. It was one of the series that got me back into comics in the early days, and the panel where Jenny Sparks, her clothes changed to look like Captain Atom in his like metallic suit. How did she not make a joke about being friends with the engineer from The Authority who looked like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't remember that. So
yeah, so it's a small point, but
that's fine. Yeah, it's good. And I really like that the art doesn't look like anything. Like she doesn't look like any character or drawing. I don't know. Like they did like a great job of making her look like a unique person instead of just the blonde lady face. You know, like
no, I completely agree. I mean, I love her face acting. I love her posture. I love I love how she comports herself. I love the baggy pants. Like it all works for me. I'm really
You gotta give it to Warren Ellis. He created some incredibly unique characters. Like if I think about all the times that, I mean, like there's so many people when they create new characters, I'm air quoting, they're just analogs to things that already existed. There's no Jack Hawksmoors.
No,
there's nothing that's like I think maybe Grant Morrison has done some stuff like that, but it's almost beyond that.
Homo Urbanus, he's like he can like yeah.
He communicates with Sid. It's ridiculous. It doesn't even make any sense, but it's great.
He can punch harder in Mexico City because it's more densely populated. Like brilliant, like fucking awesome.
She really did remember that.
Yeah, no, I love Jack Hawksmoor.
So, speaking of wonderful books that are not like anything, Standstill, 4th issue came out this week from Image. This is written and colored by the veteran, incredibly talented colorist Lee Lowridge. And I don't have to tell you that a lot of times when folks who come from other other parts of the craft, your letterers, your colorists, the folks who aren't really doing storytelling, they come on, they say, I'm going to write a book. It does not always turn out that well. But this is a damn fine bit of comic book storytelling. It's drawn by Andrew Robinson, and this one was I guess partially drawn by Alex Riegel. What's interesting here is that this should bother me a lot more than it does because I hate reading landscape books on an iPad. But
that is a challenge.
Yeah, but the whole thing is it's all double page spreads, so it's extra long. They make it feels like it's as long as reading a standard comic book, but in terms of like if it was paper, it's as many pages. It's twice as many pages because the whole thing is done in 2-page spreads, so widescreen format more or less.
Plus, if this is your first episode of the show, Josh loves stories about manipulating time.
I do. No, that's absolutely true, but I wouldn't be leading with that in this because it's a very specific kind of manipulating time, and it firmly caps it in a hard sci-fi kind of version of our world where the people who created this device to stop time momentarily, hence the title Standstill, they're kind of, kids who are working out of a garage, Apple computer kind of thing,
Primer, folks saw the movie Primer.
Yeah, and the villain here is this really interesting, like you're not quite like he seems pretty evil at times, but then at other times like he's not. He's a little
right. It's almost not clear that he's the villain. I mean, he's doing bad things. He's hurting people, but like it's also maybe people
he's hurting bad people.
Exactly right. Yeah, but he's hurting them in ways that are cruel.
Yes.
To the point of it being like maybe this isn't okay.
Right. Like he doesn't. He's lost his humanity, but he's. Like basically, I think his girlfriend or wife had overdosed, I guess. Or
I also really liked that the device that the sort of good guys build to sort of be able to tap into the same power set. The device works, but it only activates when the other guy turns it on his end, and I thought that was really clever, and like that's like an interesting challenge for the heroes to overcome.
I think there were a lot of stuff about that too that was thoughtful in the way that like, I got to shove it into my wrist because it's in my nervous system. I figure, 30% chance it'll kill me, and just the way that they sort of dealt with that, I thought it was really nice writing. And then of course it's very fun to have, the bullet time guy where he is the only one moving in a world that stopped and what that looked like and how he got bored. he got stuck there for 4 hours and ended up falling asleep. And it just sort of like brought this down to this real world level as opposed to all the fantastic. But it was more like, well, what would this really be like? And granted, if I was in the world where time stopped, it would take me a little longer than 4 hours to get bored of it. But I
feel like I would take a nap almost immediately.
I just went, actually, that would be a great nap. It would be an all-time nap.
Yeah.
But like the way that he wrote on the lady's hands so that when she looked, like he could prove that had already happened. Really thoughtful stuff. I mean, why has this guy just been coloring books forever? He's a really good colorist. That's part of why. And then it's a really unique book. And this is another one where I was just like, man, where's this book coming from? It's like another book.
It's also one of those books that works as a comic in a way where another type of media couldn't do this. And it's both because of the 2-page spread structure, but also the fact that like comic panels are frozen in time. So like doing a story.
Right. That's what I was.
Yeah.
It's so weird, right? Because it should be really hard to depict that because every single panel is doesn't move. They're all static.
Yep.
But they did it. And that's kind of neat. That's a cool trick. And I just think that it could easily be a gimmick where somebody's like, we're going to make the whole book in double page spreads and landscape. And she's like, why? And I was like, I read it. And I can't tell you literally why it works, but it does work.
Yep.
Like it's a form change that the form and the function work together as opposed to just like, I think it'll look cool if we did this. Same way that Tom King's nine panel grids, or I guess if you want to be specific, Alan Moore's or any of the people before him, but you know what I mean.
Get Scott McCloud on Talksplode, but only ask him about this book.
No way. I'm pretty sure I don't think that's a good idea. Let's finally, in the last of this segment, another one of those books where I was like, this is the weirdest book, and I love it, is Dead Eyes, The Empty Frames, #3. This is a sequel to the we've talked about it a little bit. A sequel to the Dead Eyes series that Jerry Duggan and John McCrae put out. By the way, Jerry Duggan, John McCrae, Mike Spicer, Joe Sabino, just top quality talent on this. I love John McCrae. Wrote, drew one of my favorite books of all time. And Jerry Duggan contains multitudes. So this is about a famous Boston thief, Dead Eyes, and he wears a mask and a Boston Scully cap. And in this sequel, he is trying to retrieve the stolen paintings from the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist, which is a real thing. And at first you're like, oh, they're taking this story which is kind of realistic, but definitely sensational. And they're putting it into the real world. But this book, do you read this? Are you?
I read the first issue. I didn't keep up with it, and I will, but I just didn't have time this week.
So in this one, he goes into the house to steal the paintings, and like somebody else is there, and he's, for whatever reason, he's sick. He's been throwing up the whole time, and he just keeps puking in the middle of this robbery, and he gets in a fight with a guy, pukes on that guy, that makes that guy puke. Then that guy slips and puke. It's the weirdest, most lowbrow thing, but it is beautifully rendered.
Boston.
Yeah. Well, they there may be something to the stereotype of these people drinking too much. There could be. I don't.
Cue the Dropkick Murphys.
Yeah. Again, just like what a weird book. Like I can't. I want to get that guy on the show and talk about it. Like, where the hell is this coming from? But that mixing of true crime and fantastical crime has been very fun. That's it. Those are the books. Those are the books that we wanted to talk about.
What about
those are the books
that other people might want us to talk about?
Well, every week the patrons at or patreon.com/iFanboy. I want to get that backwards every time. Apparently, get to vote for the book that they want us to talk about.
They get to devote their time to voting.
They do. They can devote a small amount of time to devote. And the pick this week is for the patrons is the Rocketfellers. You could say it faster and it'll sound like the Rockefellers. But if you say the Rocketfellers, #1, story by Peter J. Tomasi, as opposed to Peter Q. Tomasi. Peter J. Tomasi with art by the brilliant Francis Manipul. Letters by Rob Lee. This is part of Jeff Johns' shared universe. What is it? Ghost Machine?
Yes.
Is it Ghost Machine? So this is connected. I think he's got three universes in this one, and this I forget which one. This isn't related to the Geiger Junkyard Joe one. It's a slightly different one, I think. You know what? I don't know that I remember it all that well, which might be part of my review.
I wanted to like this so much more than I did, unfortunately. Like I was very excited about this.
I feel like there was
this is in the Family Odysseys sub-universe.
Yeah. I feel like there was a preview of this, and I thought, oh, that's cool. And then I read it, and I was a little underwhelmed.
Yes.
And so I kind of I was prepared for that. And I guess that would kind of be my review here, is that it was somewhat underwhelming.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to agree. I mean, I love Francis Manapul. I think Peter J. Tomasi is a great yeoman writer. Sort of, really can put together a fine comic book. And this, unfortunately, I don't know if there were some. I feel like there were strange pacing issues. Ironically, in a book about time travel, there were some. There were continuity errors, but there were just like things where I'm just like, wait a second, like there's a stag and a deer, like why? Like there were things that sort of came out of nowhere that weren't really explained, that didn't quite seem to match the tone of the book.
I felt like we were skipping around an awful lot, and I never quite got a foothold. And then the family itself is supposed to be it feels like they're supposed to be very it's the dashing. It's like a Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
It's
like
Fantastic Four adjacent.
Yeah, or like Johnny Quest, or like whatever those like this family of dashing explorers. They have a cute dog. There's the daughter and who's the little girl, and who's precocious, and then the son, and there's grandfather, and but that characterization is very paint by numbers, which I think is on purpose.
It didn't quite gel or come together.
It just wasn't interesting.
Yeah.
And that, like, at the end of the day, like, the characters, I get it. They were based on archetypes.
And then the final like panel / reveal is like a gross floating eyeball thing where I'm just like, well, I don't know what that means, and it's gross.
Yeah, his eyelashes. Yeah,
I did like that it's a book that, like, it's a Thanksgiving book in the month that Thanksgiving happens, and the next issue is going to be a Christmas issue in the month that Christmas happens. Like, and it's a book about time, and so I actually felt like I hadn't seen that conceptually where you're like playing with the release schedule as a part of the format. Not since like Long Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hate that. I like that part of it. I didn't think the dog was that cute. I'll be honest.
Well, I mean, just the idea that what was it? Is it there's a dog in Johnny Quest, right? Little spot eye dog
Bandit?
or something, maybe. I don't know. Like, it was just, I get what they were going for, but I don't think it worked.
I don't know that I do get what they were going for.
I feel like it was that sort of like wholesome family adventure kind of story, and they put a little bit of drama into it to make it seem slightly more mature, but none of that stood out in any way, and so it just was. It didn't add anything to this conversation. It was like, it wasn't really a twist on it. It was like, this is our version of this kind of thing. Space Family Robinson, whatever it is. And I don't like, there was nothing memorable.
Now, wait, has anyone done Space Family Robinson? Because that might actually be, that's a good pitch.
I mean, that's what Lost in Space is. That's Danger Will Robinson. Like, it's,
I guess they literally did use the same last name.
Yeah. There's been two series about it. But you know what? What's interesting actually is that the Netflix Lost in Space show is very much like this in that it's pretty wholesome. Like, the characters are, I know the original one was like that.
Does it have Matt LeBlanc in it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Parker Posey.
I mean, that was the best part
of people I don't know.
The 90s one.
Oh, you mean the movie? That's another one.
Yeah. With Gary
there's
Oldman
a Netflix series.
And Heather Graham and Matt LeBlanc playing it was like Matt LeBlanc's attempt at his like sort of star making, I'm going to be a movie star role, and I thought it was great, and the rest of the world did not. Yeah.
Well, anyway, like this doesn't bring anything to that.
Yeah,
like, it's got great art, and it feels like it should be important and good, but ultimately, I mean, literally, I started to talk about it, and I was like, oh, what even is this?
Yeah, I mean, I even texted you earlier, like, I'm partway through, and it's because of the Francis Manipul art alone, it's a
Mhm.
contender for pick of the week. Like that, any Francis Manipul book will
Mhm.
will be in that discussion, in that headspace, and this just didn't bring enough to it to
I
get
don't
there.
know who I don't know who the audience is supposed to be. It's too old-fashioned to appeal to young people, and if you're older, unless you're really into the nostalgia of the thing and you're like, "I just want this. I want Chex cereal." Um, like, it's not
Nobody
I don't know
wants.
what it's bringing,
Yeah,
you know? That's ultimately, like, the thing. It made no impact on me, which is surprising. Actually, what's interesting is that I think that taking that really basic concept and that strong sort of American sci-fi adventure wholesome TV show thing is a thing that Jeff Johns does really well.
mm.
And he manages to put some sort of spin on it that makes it more enjoyable than maybe a writer who is not quite as talented would do. And I think that, unfortunately, in this case, we got the not quite as talented writer. I feel bad about saying Peter J. Tomasi has done books that I have loved, but this was not one of them.
Yeah. Ratings.
Ratings.
Ratings. I think the book is competent, even if it wasn't quite something that stuck with us. And I do love Francis Manipul, so I think I'm still at a 3.
I think that parts of the book were competent. I believe the art was competent, but I think that the story suffered from a lack of consistent pacing and structure, so that I don't think one thing went from one to the next and let you, when you kill off a character very early on that we have no, I mean, like, basically, so in the very beginning, like, it's a whole, there's a grandmother,
Grandma
grandfather,
falls through the
and the
ice.
and the grandmother sacrifices herself to save everybody, and there's a big villain, but, like, we don't know who they are. We don't care.
Yeah.
Just you're banking on the fact that somebody's going to be like, "Oh my god, it's the grandma," but
No, there was like a panel where like the hero dad character is talking about, he's like, Roses, my mom, she's gone, Rachel. And I'm like, I couldn't have told you
yeah,
that those were the two names between the two characters that he's talking to.
I don't know a
Like I
single.
don't know who he's talking to, and I don't know who he's talking about, like, other than
The
the
only
context.
character who was sort of interesting was the grandfather, and he's the one who should have been mourning about his wife dying.
Right? Instead of like doing pull-ups on the tree trying to like get the ladies from the nursing home to
That was the best segment in the entire thing.
It
I'll
was.
tell you that
Agreed.
right now. Ratings for me, 2. I really did enjoy it. So the other questions would you have read this had it
Yes.
not been Patron Pick?
Yes,
I wouldn't
100%.
have, because I remembered that I read it. I read a bit of it before, and I was like, I didn't like it at all, and I didn't think this would be any different, and it wasn't. And then, are you sticking with it? Are you going to read the next one?
Probably not.
Mhm.
If it's a super light week, but not, yeah, I would say it's wouldn't make the cut on a normal week, nor a heavy week like this week.
That's a no for me, dog. What's that from? Is that American Idol?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is that show still on?
I have no idea.
So that was the patron pick. Thanks to the patrons at patreon.com/iFanboy. And of course, every patron who subscribes at the $5 or higher level gets a patron power. It is a superpower that we conceive and bestow upon the folks. And this week,
But
take it away.
is it dumb? Is the
I
question.
didn't say that. I skipped that part because I don't like it. I don't say it. It's in our script.
Peter DePader, which is a fun name to say. I hadn't said it out loud before, but
I noticed that when I was writing it, I was like, Peter DePader.
That's the chimichanga of names. Chimichanga is like my favorite word to say out loud.
I can see that.
Peter DePader has the I would say enviable power that he can change the teeth in his mouth to any other vertebrate's teeth, but only once per animal. So like the one time he says, like, I really need great white shark teeth right now, he can manifest those teeth in his mouth, and then the teeth will fall out and be replaced by his normal human teeth, but he can never go back to Great White Shark.
Like, what's her name from The Runaways?
Yes,
she can
Nico.
only use each spell once.
She can only cast one spell. You can only cast the spell once, but he can do that with changing out his teeth. I think the teeth are full sized, and so if he goes like elephant, like he's gonna have like elephant sized tusks sticking out of his face.
Can he hurt himself like that, or can he form around them?
I think
because otherwise
he would hurt himself if like his neck muscles weren't ready for the strain. So like he could slip a disc, which would not be good. So he does need to be somewhat prepared, but I would think that his like physical mouth won't be hurt by the size of the teeth. His mouth will form to match.
Do you think? I think it would be a very good idea for him to become very familiar with animal dentistry. Not what would you call it? There's words for it, science words for like teeth for what would it be?
Oh, so I mean, I don't know that dentistry is the wrong word here.
Animal.
I mean, it's
like if you were talking about like you could say skeletal whatever. Like what's the teeth version of that? Like he would want to be familiar with those concepts, the biology of animals' teeth.
Right.
What about animals that don't necessarily have teeth per se, but have teeth-like things?
Like armadillos? Well, I mean, armadillos have teeth, but...
like some have like crushing jaws and things. I think that his biology would have to change a little bit to take advantage of the teeth that are in there. Otherwise, it's just clothes that don't fit.
I think the power does work that way. I mean, I think the area where it's unclear what would happen, and Peter's just going to have to play around with this and see what happens, is like anteaters have no teeth, right? And so... I don't know what happens if he manifests an anteater.
How useful would it be to have mouse teeth?
Well, incredibly useful because their incisors grow continuously and have a layer of enamel on the anterior side of the tooth and a layer of dentin on the posterior side of the tooth. So it forms a natural chisel. So if he needs to chisel something,
but they're so tiny. You said they were the same size.
But rodents are one of the most diverse groups of mammals, so he's got a lot of rodents to get through.
So is it once per species?
Yeah.
Or is there there's a further subsection? So like dogs are all one species, but there's different breeds. Does he get to do the different breeds?
Nope. He can do Canis lupus familiaris once. And honestly, I'm not a big fan of subspecies. I feel like subspecies are just biologists' excuse for not knowing what species are. Like we don't have time to get into it, but
no, we don't.
The species is a foundational concept in biology. Like if you ask a biologist cannot tell you the definition of life, and they cannot tell you the definition of species. So it is a science that cannot define the two most fundamental concepts within that scientific field.
So you're saying that race is a construct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is. Sorry. That's not funny, but I'm laughing because it's uncomfortable. Although it is entirely true. So that is a good and weird power, and it's got a little body horror to it.
And only vertebrates. He can't manifest like beetle jaws. Like that's
okay. That's fair. No mandibles, as it were.
Exactly.
Are mandibles present on mammals?
Yes, it's the name of the lower jawbone.
Okay, so that's fine. I pictured like the Zorak, like the predator things. I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
I would call that a mandible, but I don't know that that's what it is. Hey, let's do one question.
Great.
From the audience. Andrew, he didn't say where he's from, but that's fine. That's his deal. You don't have to. He also doesn't tell us how long he's been thinking about this. We should probably skip this one.
Yeah.
Connor recently mentioned a memory of reading the entire trade of something. Watchmen, maybe? Yeah, probably. That was what we talked about recently on a college friend's couch. Okay, first of all, it was Watchmen. Second of all, my couch. What are some of your other sense memories of reading comics? Any specific comics that trigger a memory of reading on a car trip, or even just a random subway ride, random issue number 38 of some series that really just sticks with you?
For me,
go ahead.
Yeah, I do actually. The bookstore I went to as a kid, I didn't have a comic shop in my town growing up, so the bookshop where I got my comics used to do this thing where it was like they had issues like newsstand style single issues of comics, and when they inevitably didn't sell, they would package them into just like sort of brown bag, grab bag, like you $5 for this bag of random comics.
100% understand.
And there were 2 books that I read probably 100 times each that stick out to me. One is an issue of Spectacular Spider-Man where it's the Harry Osborn Green Goblin era, and it's him with Harry's son, I think also named Norman, and Liz Allen,
Lil
and
Normie.
Molten Man. Like, Molten Man? Who's thought about Molten Man in 1,000 years?
Molten Man.
And so I distinctly remember like opening the bag and reading that comic, and then the other comic was a Superman comic after the death and return of Superman. He went on trial for some alien tribunal, and the issue was him.
This is the sense memory of the thing.
Correct.
So do you remember sitting there and reading those things?
No, because I read them so many times. I think the sense memory, I actually also have a Watchmen sense memory because my college roommate gave me Watchmen, and I do remember sitting in my dorm and reading it all the way through, and V for Vendetta. I can picture myself in my college dorm room reading both of those books.
V for Vendetta, by the way, a forgotten excellent movie adaptation.
You just love Hugo Weaving.
No, not particularly.
Really?
I found his accent in Slow Horses to be terrible.
I have watched Horses too.
Well, I don't really have a thought about him one way or the other. He's only in 2 things that I can remember. And they're both like,
I was
Lord of the Rings and Matrix. So.
I was going to say, I was complaining about something yesterday to Julie, and she just immediately went to like, all are those who live to see such times. I'm like, God damn it.
True.
I'm tired of that quote. Like, I know, she does have one. Me, and she's a legitimate Lord. Like, my wife is a legitimate Lord of the Rings super fan, and she still annoyed me by pulling that quote out at that moment.
So,
what about you?
I have a bunch, actually, and they're mostly from being younger, because that's what it is.
Well, in the words of Mitch Hedberg, every photo is a photo of you when you were younger. Here's a photo of me 10 minutes from now. Where the fuck did you get that camera?
I'm nostalgic for just now. I don't remember the words, but it was something like that. When I was younger, I didn't have money. Like when I was a young adult on my own, and I remember I would go to Borders. For those of you still are, there was Borders. It's like Barnes and Noble, but it's shut down. And I would read the Preacher trades, and they had like leather. It was in Los Angeles, and they had like leather chairs, and I would just grab the Preacher trade like I was in a library and read through it. And I did that for a while. I eventually bought them, obviously, in a different format. But like I remember sitting in that chair for hours and reading through all their Preacher books, the Borders, and it just made me so happy. And like I could wait to go get the next one.
You just brought up another one for me. When the original Ultimate Spider-Man series came out, Marvel put the first couple issues online with this like super janky, clunky e-reader, browser-based e-reader. And I distinctly remember sitting in my family's computer room, office with the computer room. Literally, my parents had to get a second phone. They had to get a second phone line just because I would not get off of America Online. Like I was like, I'm going to be tying up the phone line for the rest of our lives, and that has proven true. And I remember, sitting there flipping, like clicking, using the mouse and the screen to read the original, the original Bendis and Bagley Ultimate Spider-Man page by page on this, waiting for them to load. I almost needed like another book to read in between pages loading. Like the internet was that slow.
That was just before broadband was a thing.
Mm-hmm. No, I distinctly remember going to summer camp on a college campus and going to their computer lab and running home to tell my parents, like at the end of camp, telling my parents, like, Mom, Dad, this college has internet that is 56.6 kilobytes per second. Like, can you believe it?
Talking bauds.
Yeah.
When I lived in New York City, and especially when we were doing iFanboy full time, every Wednesday I would go in. I would either take the train, or I lived in Queens, which means that I wasn't in Manhattan, but I go get my comics in Manhattan, or I'd ride my bike or whatever, and I would pick up my comics I changed stores a lot, but at a certain point when we were doing this as our job, I always went to Midtown Comics near Grand Central, and I would grab comics, and then I would get lunch. Either there was a Baja Fresh down the road, or under Grand Central's there's a big concourse with food places, and I would go down there and I would get lunch and I would just read comics. Like I'd find a table. I love one of my favorite things in life, especially when I worked out in the world, is to go out to lunch by myself and read. I used to read books like that. Every once in a while I would read comics like that. In fact, I got to the point where like I loved it so much is that like people were like, you want to go to lunch? And I was like, not really. I want to do my thing. But I would sit there and read, comics. And I had that paper bag and it had the books in them. And I'd eat, like slices of pizza there or whatever. And it was like really one of those happy places. And I remember I was down there the first time and I saw that ad that we got put in the DC Comics. And I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I have a lot of those.
Do you ever reflect on like, I often wonder, if I went back and could talk to my 10-year-old, 12-year-old self and what I might say to them that I myself wouldn't believe.
Mm-hmm.
And like one of them is like, there'll be days as an adult where like you get to go for a bike ride and read comics and play video games and eat a hamburger.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh my God, that's all I want. Like that's
so good.
And the other thing I've often thought about telling your 12-year-old self is that like there will be a live action Justice League movie and you will not give a shit. You will not care at all.
There will be so many comic book live action movies produced in high quality, and you will be so sick of them.
Yeah. I wouldn't believe myself.
I could keep going on like this forever. I remember buying the huge, this will be my last one, buying the large box office Poison, the whole Alex Robinson's box office Poison in one big volume, this big brick that I still have. And I don't think I really knew what it was. I maybe had heard of it and I took a flyer on it. And just reading the entire thing in one setting, I can picture the room I had at the time. I had this janky old little couch that was at the foot of my bed and just being on that and reading the entire thing in one day. And then when I first met Alex, may have been an email. I bought a page after that pretty soon after. And I emailed and I don't know, like I feel like I talked to him and said this, but I never met him. So it must have been over email. I had never met him.
I definitely had a con interaction with Alex Robinson early on in my comics reading life. And I do have a vague memory. I don't know exactly where I was, but I remember the moment in reading Too Cool to Be Forgotten where I just started bawling.
Yeah.
It's one of we talked in episode 950 about comic moments that made us cry, and that's one that I'd forgotten about. But Too Cool to Be Forgotten, there's a moment where it's like, sort of a reconciliation with the father that just ruined me.
I remember that. So, but in that, I remember saying to him, like, "Oh man, I read your whole book in one day," and that was supposed to be like a compliment. Like I couldn't put it down, and he was just like, 6 years of my life.
That's how I felt about Blankets, which is like, it's funny that like Blankets and Box Office Poison both published by Top Shelf, and they're published in almost like they're almost the same length and the same format. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. This is a detail. This isn't specific, but I can tell what time a memory from a comic book is by what the comic book is made out of and how the paper feels and how the cover feels. So comics felt one way when I was, an adolescent. They had thinner sort of brown, more yellow brownish newsprint in them. And the fancier comics were printed on, heavier paper. And I remember when there was like the heavier newsprint kind of uncoated paper, and then everything moved to the sort of glossy coated sort of paper as you went on. And then the comic books started costing $3, $4 like that. And I always, when I think of a comic book story from the past, I always tend to remember the type of paper and the type of build that it was. I can that's one of those things that that I remember. So like when you say, this is something that's taken away by digital because I don't remember that. But if you say to me V for Vendetta, I remember what the book felt like, what the quality of that paper was.
Vertigo had the shittiest paper.
Yeah, well, the worst is all those preachers, and I had started buying them, by the way. Eventually, I sort of had them all, and then when the last one came out, the 9th volume, they had downgraded the paper to like a almost not newsprint, but a cheaper quality uncoated paper, and I was like, "Motherfucker, you can't!" Because like the last one, which tells me it means it didn't sell, or at least the end didn't.
What kills me is when they would change the spine style art, like art, so like the books didn't match up on your shelf. That drove me insane. The last one I'll share is I mentioned it, I think also on 950 when we were doing the all email show. When I worked at a comic shop, I would stock the shelves Tuesday night with all the new comics for the Wednesday morning rush, and there was like a Wednesday morning rush. There would be a line of guys outside the door waiting. And this is the era, you know, I worked in a
Nerds.
comic shop. I know, right? I worked in a comic shop in the era where, like, when Ed Brubaker killed Captain America, it was on CNN. Like, that's, you know, the time I was in the comic shop. And I have a sense memory of sitting on a box in the back room getting to read. You know, once I'd finished stocking the shelves, my boss would let me sit and read through all the books coming up because he wanted me to be able to sell them in the morning. Yeah, I remember sitting in the back room, stock room, sitting on a box reading the comics that hadn't even come out yet, and just feeling like feeling like I, you know, had unlocked a secret of the universe of just like I can't believe I get to sit here and read these books before anyone else.
And now look at you just taking it for granted.
Yeah.
That was great. Great email. Thanks, Andrew. If you would like to write in, you can do so at contact@ifanboy.com. If you'd like to send in an email for our Mediasplode show, just put that phrase, Mediasplode, in the subject line, and we build those up and go through them when we can. Yep, great one. Let me go through some of the announcements and things. This past week, I released a Talksplode with my pal, who I haven't talked to in a long time, Mitch Gerrits. You will know Mitch mostly from working with Tom King. He hasn't. I was like, wait, have you worked with anyone other than Tom King?
I was trying to explain to a coworker of mine about the crudité dip panel, and I couldn't find it on Google.
We talked about that.
Yeah,
we talked about it.
Apparently,
he sells prints of it.
It's one of my favorite comic panels of all time. Like
I'm gonna brag about a thing. Is he didn't really think very much of that. But not that he didn't think it was badly. He just didn't make much note of it. And I made a really big deal out of it when it came out. And he was like, I remember that. It made me think about it a lot. And I started using that little line thing to indicate motion a lot more often. It's my own little tiny part in that. But awesome. Either way, it's a great conversation. Really like into craft stuff. He's become such a confident artist. I was going to say competent and confident at the same time, but you know, just a guy who understands his craft and really loves it. And we talk about all that. I really, really, really enjoyed it. It's like talking great comics with people who are great artists. So please check that out. But either way, it was worth for me to do it. So if you don't like it, go screw. Before that, you know, we had a free podcast. We had a Mediasplode a week before that, where that was the Mediasplode, the year-end mailbag. We talked about all sorts of stuff that wasn't comics. And let's see, before that, there was the Booksplode for Dark Knight Strikes Again. Those are the special edition, non-pick of the week shows. And then, so coming up for the rest of the year, this will be Pound 955. That is on 11/24. And then you've got two more regular shows, 956 and 957 in December. And then we should have a Booksplode or a Talksplode after that. And then the year-end media roundups are long, sort of 3 hour. We talk about everything that isn't comics, all the little comics in that one.
I've said it before and I will say it again. Maybe my favorite podcast drop of the entire year, every single year. Like, I love that show. Like, I am so excited when that episode hits.
Very nice.
And usually because like I'm in an airport, so I've got the time to listen to it because I'm traveling. But I really love that episode.
I didn't know that. December 15th, that one will be out. And then we will be taking a little break back on January 5th with Pick of the Week number 958. All right, so you can find our library of shows over at ifanboy.com, wherever podcasts are sold, bought, distributed, bought, sold, or otherwise, whatever it was that Lloyd Dobler said. You can follow us at iFanboy Comics on Instagram and find out what the pick of the week is before the show comes out. Sometimes you'll find the best of the week in panels if Connor can get to it, and he loves to get to those things, so it's pretty regular. You can follow our individually.
I always feel guilty that I contribute nothing to that, even though every week I'm reading comics, I think, oh, that'd be a good panel.
Do you know why I don't anymore? Because he had a whole format that he made up to have to do it, and it was too much for me.
Yeah, I think I encountered that a couple of times and was like,
I was like, can I just post it and say it was this and this? It was like a whole thing. I was like, sorry, that is not going to work for the way that my neurodivergence goes. That takes away all the fun. And so I just don't do it. CSGO Patrick and Jay Flanagan on Instagram, and you are
Ryan Haupt.
Yeah, Ryan Haupt on Instagram. I don't know anymore because I don't ever see any fucking posts from people I know anymore.
Sure.
It's just like, you'll see the greatest thing. And shut up.
You'll never believe. No, I will believe. It's not that unbelievable. Stop.
I won't get a chance to.
Subscribe to youtube.com/iFanboy, where you'll find all our old video shows, and we post this show every week as well. It's not a video podcast because we're having a conversation. We don't need to look at each other to do it, but it
throws us off.
It would, but it's if YouTube's the way you get podcasts, it's available there for you. Please consider writing a review or leaving a star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're paying for podcasts, just cut out the middleman. Send us a check.
If you're paying for podcast, well, I was about to say you're getting screwed over because they're free, but then I thought, no, there's those networks that do stuff. So fair enough.
Thanks for listening.
That is the show. I'm Connor. I
Josh.
just read it. See you next week.
Stay safe out there.
I'm Josh.
I'm Ron Burgundy.